Susan Wickham served as minister in this church in the 1980s. This letter is from August 1986, which she wrote to Glenn Seha. Dear Glenn, I want to extend to you my apology in regard to the matter of the summer order of service, summer schedule. As I checked around, I found that you were, of course, correct. I find that every once in a while, I am capable of holding an incorrect idea with real vigor. It's embarrassing and humbly. I'm sorry. One time while I was living in Chicago, I got on the wrong L train. I was living on the north side and had attended something on the south side. I used the L in the subway system regularly. This included changing trains in the loop. I usually used the same entrance to the system. On this occasion, I found it more convenient to use an entrance a block north of the one that I normally used. As I entered the system, I was convinced that I knew exactly where I was going and so forth. I was disturbed that the signs were incorrect. I knew then that although the sign said train south, that the trains would take me north. I muttered about the efficiency of the CTA and boarded the train that would take me north to my 7:30 p.m. meeting. As the train traveled, I marveled at how I can see something over and over again and still find something that I had not seen before. Finally, the train arrived at the first stop after I had boarded it. It was 3500 south. The sign, of course, were correct. I then had to wait for another train that would eventually take me north to my meeting at 3200 north. I hope my stubbornness has not disturbed you. Sincerely, from the error, Susan W.
A footnote to that, I thought it would be quicker to use that exact entrance that she used when I had Stuart, who was I think 8 years old at the time, and we had just come out of the Art Institute and yes, realized we couldn't access the train that we watched it show up across the way and watched it go. And there's Stuart crying, what do we do now? We have to take the 10 o'clock p.m. train home. There you go. When I was in high school, the building was fairly old. It had 3 floors, but the top one was mostly storage by my day, so it was locked. And in some areas, walled off. In one particular place, the stairs started on the first floor, went up to the second floor, and then just kept going till they ended in a wall. One day I went up the stairs on the first floor, thinking about something else. Didn't realize I'd gotten to the second floor and just kept going. It wasn't until I almost walked into the wall that I realized my error. Turned around, and of course, there were several girls looking up at me, almost drooling with laughter at that weirdo Florence walking up the stairway to nowhere. And here I made my second mistake. I tried to think of a reason I had gone there on purpose. I was looking for something. I said, of course, this was the icing on the cake, and they almost peed their pants laughing so hard. With the benefit of hindsight, How simple it would have been to just laugh along with them. Oh, like you've never done that. Come on. Nope. I was young and self-conscious and honestly thought I did not look like a bigger idiot trying to explain why I had done something without thinking. We have all done something like this. I know this because it's not possible to have reached the age of 5 without doing something stupid. It is how we learn, it's how we grow, it's why we have the expression self-correcting behavior. I've been going through church records from the last 70 years and have come across some amazing stories hidden in board minutes, letters to and from various people in the church. Reverend Susan, who served in the 80s, seemed to have kept copies of every single letter she sent or received, giving us a wonderful picture of church life back then. When I found the letter sent U.S. mail to Glen Ceja that Bill read, I thought, ooh, there's a sermon here. At an auction dinner many years ago, a very nice lady told us about a man in the news who had reacted strongly, shall we say, to his daughter disobeying a religious law. It was a disturbing story. I seem to remember that he committed what he would have considered an honor killing. We in the room were horrified at the story, and this only got worse when she blithely added, "You have to admire his commitment to his beliefs." When no one was prepared to say what we were all thinking, I base this belief on everyone's expression, she repeated herself. Still, no one wanted to start an argument. But I will bet money that Dave and I were not the only ones who talked about it on the way home. No, we don't have to admire something like that. What kind of monster would admire commitment to a belief that his daughter was better off dead than talking to a man she wasn't related to? My dear woman, are you on crack? Etc. Now, of course, I wish we would have argued politely. At least, I like to think she was hoping someone would. Clearly, the story disturbed her. Maybe someone saying something out loud would have given her food for thought and reassured her. Now, I've come up here many times and described songs or stories or jokes or essays, you name it, that I disagreed with. And why? Sometimes I'm pretty adamant in my opinions and I'm hoping to change yours. But other times I've told about how those ideas kept bugging me until I was able to see them a different way. And I learned something. This is why we are here in this building with these people on this earth. Either way, just the exercise of questioning my own beliefs helps me. As Karsten Stoltz, a young man who grew up in our church around the same time as my son Stuart, once wrote during an RE session, "Change isn't good. Good change is good." I was talking to Eileen Crutchfield a few months ago here. We first met many years ago when I was a librarian at the Mishawaka Library, and she reserved many, many books. In those days, you had to ask a librarian to fill out a form for you to do that, which is why I knew her name. We talked about our mutual love for mysteries, and she suggested Louise Penny's Three Pines books. I hadn't read them, but now I have, all 18, and can now understand why they are so popular. They are full of poetry, philosophy, and French-Canadian food. If anyone wants to partner on an auction event based on those books, I am on board. Anyway, the hero, Armand Gamache, is an inspector in Montreal. And he tells his subordinates that there are 4 sentences they need to remember, which lead to wisdom. I'm sorry. I don't know. I need help. I was wrong. And the people in Three Pine Stories make lots and lots of mistakes, some with fatal consequences, but they just keep on keeping on because they are willing to learn and question themselves. Another favorite Gamache saying, "Don't believe everything you think." One example of a story that I've had problems with in the past and have changed my viewpoint on is that old Christian standby about the prodigal son. And just the other week, someone came up here during Joys and Concerns and noted what it's like to have two children, one doing well and the other not so well. You love them both, but one of them takes up more of your time. This can cause resentment on the part of the parent as well as either of the kids. And for the longest time, I related way more to the oldest son, who felt like he had been taken for granted. But now that I'm older, I realize how hard it is to feel that you have lost a child who's still alive, just somewhere else, and never coming home again. What utter ecstasy it would be to see that child again, even head down, saying, "I was wrong. I'm sorry. I don't know if you'll have me back, but I need help." What joy to know that child wants to be wise. The journey has begun, even if they never get there. The journey has begun. Yes, it's time to celebrate. I've been thinking a lot about this while David and I rewatched the 4 seasons of the show, The Good Place, the other week. For anyone not familiar with the premise, it's about the admittedly flawed theory of an eternity of consequences after being judged for what you did during your brief time on earth. In one case, a particularly unpleasant man needs to be told he is a bad person before he feels remorse. Many people hint at this repeatedly, giving examples of why his behavior is hurtful, to no avail. He is convinced they are all wrong and that he is indeed a good person. But when he is faced with overwhelming evidence that no one in the afterlife can stand him, something cracks. It is only when he starts to say, "I'm sorry," that he can truly begin his journey to wisdom and to becoming a good person, worthy of the good place. It's a long journey. Spoiler alert, he is still on that journey at the end of the series. We know this because we hear him saying, "So you mean you can't tell a woman to smile even if she legitimately would be prettier if she did?" At least he's questioning his beliefs. That is a big step. For him, this is a version of everything you know is wrong. That sentence is not true. The sentence is never true, but that's what it feels like. Here's an illustration of that feeling. I remember when I first started attending First Unitarian in the 1990s, and I came here with my then fiance, Ken, a very nice Catholic man. During one service, Reverend John Morehouse talked about what is known as the Immaculate Conception and the various reasons that Jesus's mom, Mary, was defined as a virgin. I'm not going to go into the specific reasons that he listed, but suffice to say, none of them were based on medical or scientific evidence. I glanced over at Ken, who was unusually still and tense looking, and I whispered, "You believe Mary was a virgin, right?" And with no change in expression, he answered, "Yes." Now, some of you may be wondering about that Immaculate Conception thing. Apparently, Reverend Morehouse was under the impression that the phrase Immaculate Conception refers to Mary's virginity, in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary, such as giving birth. This stuck in Ken's craw, as it were. So after the service was over, he went over to the minister and helpfully explained The phrase refers to how Mary herself was conceived, so that she of all women was considered a worthy vessel for Jesus later on. And to my gratification, Reverend Morehouse was genuinely surprised and thanked Ken for giving him the correct information with something to the effect of, "I learn something new every day." Now, Ken and I talked a bit more on the way home, and I was curious that none of Morehouse's information had made any difference in Ken's beliefs. Ken could not figure out why I would think it should. "Well, how would you like it if you believed something all your life and then someone told you it wasn't true?" he asked. I answered that I'd be annoyed that it had taken this long for me to find out, but glad that I no longer had the wrong information in my head. I was a librarian after all. He just looked at me and shook his head. Of course, beliefs are different from objective facts, but shouldn't beliefs be based on what our senses tell us, what we can hear and see and touch and taste? We all know someone like this. They would rather keep arguing or just tell you to shut up than face the consequences. Sometimes it's something that is easily verifiable via Google. And as a former librarian, that hurts. Subjective beliefs are one thing, but actual facts, come on, it is easier than ever to just look something up. It makes sense that 50 or 100 or 1,000 years ago, it wasn't so easy. Having the wrong information could be the case for most people. In fact, here's an interesting factoid. Does anyone know why it's the Guinness Book of World Records? Because Guinness is sold in pubs. Guys make bets in pubs. Drunken guys in Ireland, and I would imagine all over the world, are famous for making bets with their friends about stupid things, like who was the tallest man on earth, or what's the longest river in the world. And the geniuses at the Guinness Brewing Company decided to compile a book of every world record they could think of to help out with these drunken wagers. This they considered a public service, long before it was possible to just check the accuracy of something you believed to be true by asking Ms. Google. Now, these days, the book no longer serves that purpose for most of us. Now it's a thing to try to get into for doing something worthy of inclusion, no matter how pointless. And speaking of doing something worthy of inclusion, no matter how pointless it may seem at the time, you see the order on the order of service cover. I laughed out loud when I was downstairs in the archives room sorting board minutes, and I saw this page. A full page to say that apparently that summer, no one else on the board was literate. And therefore, no one was willing to take minutes. For 2 months, a woman who had broken her leg was unable to take minutes. I guess it was her writing leg. And no one else was able to do it either. How many UUs does it take to write up meeting minutes? I guess it's like the joke about the UU's belief in God. 1 at most. But did we learn from this amazing episode? Maybe, maybe not. At a later meeting, the minutes were taken by the minister. Yes, still no one on the board was willing to do it. And so the minister did it. That's better than nothing, but really? But the journey to wisdom continued. The later board, the secretary had to leave a meeting, and bless their pea-pickin' hearts, the minutes actually say, at this point, the secretary had to leave, and Trixie continued taking minutes. Look at you doing that responsible adult thing. We knew you had it in you. We make our fair share of mistakes at home, in this place, among these people, in this world. As we emerge from the pandemic, which will probably never really end, we are finding our way in this new existence. We're hoping others will join us and make us think and rethink and grow, look at things differently. We hope we can make the world a better place. We hope our plans will lead to success, or at least if they don't, that we will learn and do better next time. If it indeed matters what we believe, then we owe it to ourselves and the world to check our premises, no matter how sure we think we are, and be willing to say one or more of those 4 sentences that lead to wisdom. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I need help. I don't know. Amen.